Welcome back. I'm your stylish scientist, Professor Peter Jonason, and I want to return to the topic of mating in our section on mating matters. Today I want to talk about a couple of things, some things I've been thinking about, but I want to describe what I see as the process that we go through in relationships and how we pick someone. What are the fundamental features that we choose, including adding one that I only have recently come to terms with that might need to be included, and how at least some parts of it, have been completely unstudied because of the difficult nature of studying them. So, to begin, the world starts physical, right? When you see someone from afar, you assess their physical features, and the first hurdle, if you will, the first filtering system, which is really what mating decision making is you go through a series of filters. So you go from being a stranger, and it goes through some sort of, let's treat it like a wire mesh filter, and these filters can be different in density, but usually the physicality feature one is not particularly dense, and if it is too dense, you might actually be having problems with your ability to find a partner. But it's everything about physical, right? It can be about age, it can be about sexual orientation. So if you're a straight man, men are automatically filtered out. If you're a gay man, then women are automatically filtered out. So it gets rid of large quantities of people from the pool very, very fast, right? It says these people aren't even included, right? And so, and obviously other things, height, smell, all these kinds of physical features, which are very gross filters. And I mean gross like ew, I mean gross like broad, wide, large, big, right? And so they filter out large populations. And so you slowly whittle down to finer and finer filters over the course of the mate selection process. And so the beginning is lots get through compared to the final filter we'll get to, but it's really meant to be what gets to the door, what's initially being considered, right? If I'm if I'm a short guy and you're a tall woman and you have that filter that says no, I won't date a guy who's shorter than me, then I'm not even being considered, right? I'm automatically rejected. And we know, so this is not a particularly nuanced filter. This is where people call one another superficial because they reject them on, guess what, relatively superficial things. Now I'm not saying physicality, like physical attractiveness, is subjective, or beauty is only skin deep, or any of these kinds of things. Simply, these are ways of culling the total number of partners that we're going to even be considering. Okay, so but once you pass this first filter, now we get to the next layer of filters, and I think there probably are only 3 layers of filters, if I'm honest with you. So the second layer is obviously more finer meshed, and it has to do with what we've already talked about being competence and compassion, right? Does the person have a good job? Are they able to live in the world? Are they a nice person? Do they have a dog, right? Are they nice to servers, things like that? And the feature that I think that I've been ignoring up until now, which should go in this same level of filtering, is actually character. And I'm not sure why I missed character in the past, but now I have to add it into this model. And so I have this paper that's under review, probably going to get accepted anytime now. It's on its like 3rd revision, but it's probably one of my favorite papers that I've ever written. But my colleague and I came up with this idea of the P and the 3 C's. We somehow missed this 4th C of character. And so now I'm going to add it in either with my students at my new university, or I'll add it in the grant that I'll be applying for here in Poland anytime now. And so I think character matters too. But either way, this is the next stage of the filtering process, right? So yeah, they're good looking, but it turns out they're dumb, right? This happens to many people. You're at a bar, you see an attractive person, you start talking to them, it turns out they're just an idiot, right? They're into, whatever you think means idiot. They're into tarot, or they can't string together a sentence, or they're just a stupid jock, or all these kinds of things, right? And the same thing with being mean, and the same thing with character. If someone isn't trustworthy or doesn't have integrity, these are pretty important filters to eliminate people, but they're not ones that are obvious from looking at someone. Now, to say that someone looks cruel, I don't know. I mean, Here in Poland, for example, people don't smile all that much. So just the fact that they don't smile doesn't mean they're a cruel person. And just because I smile a lot as an American doesn't mean I don't have competence, as in I'm an idiot, which is the stereotype for a lot of Eastern Europeans, that Americans smile a lot, which makes us look like idiots. Now, I don't think that's, of course, true. But I think these filters operate at the second level, right? So once you've started to get to know someone, they don't take that long to work out, right? So physicality you can assess before you even started talking to this person, right? You see them from afar, you see them in class, you see them at the gym or something, and you know, right? Without having said a word to this person, right? You already can say, this person fits my physical preference. Whatever that physical preference is, right? So as the great poet, Selena Gomez says, the heart wants what it wants. So this initial filtering is really just, this is what you need. These are the physical things that you need in your partner. The next level are these more character, compassion, compatibility issues, like not compatibility, sorry, competence issues, right? So is this a worthwhile member of the world, right? So are they educated? Yeah. But now we get to the third and I think final filtering stage, and that's compatibility. And this is the most finely meshed net you can imagine. And this is why when you reject people here, it's often on seeming just nonsense sometimes. I mean, there's so silly kinds of things that you can reject people on in terms of compatibility, ways in which you could just not work. You could be totally great people, beautiful, smart, nice, all these things, and still be incompatible with someone. Because these compatibility issues are kind of the long-term qualities you need to assess in someone about whether you can have a relationship that works, right? And that's really what compatibility is do we work? It's not whether you're attractive and you're nice and you're smart, it's do we as a couple work together? So, do you have similar interests? Like, do you both like to travel? In terms of chronotype, one of my favorite topics, if I'm waking up at, say, 8 a.m. on a Sunday to go to the gym, and you're sleeping until 11 or 12, well, we might not be all that compatible, right? Because I've already, half of the day is already gone, and I'm sitting maybe in the living room, trying to watch TV as quietly as I can to not wake you up. So this is a compatibility problem that could actually lead to breakups. And so if you can get through stage 1 and stage 2, you will likely be together as a couple for several months probably before you can work out compatibility. And it might even take longer until you, especially when you're younger, before you're even talking about things like family planning and professional goals, right? So when you're a college student, when you're 20, 25, life's pretty easy then. You have maybe a kind of relatively trivial job, maybe you're at university, and you haven't really planned out a long-term plan. But that long-term plan can fall apart with someone else they are incompatible with. Other stupid kinds of incompatibility can be stuff like the toilet paper, right? Does it go forward or does it go back? It can be the way your bed is made, right? So, my ex-girlfriend, she didn't like the way Americans make their bed with a single sheet and then a blanket and then a duvet, this kind of stuff, right? She wanted separate duvets, and she couldn't sleep unless there were separate blankets. And this is just unreal to me, right? It's such a nuanced thing that compatibility kicks in here, and this can cause problems. So not sleeping is an issue, right? Not feeling comfortable in that space is an issue. Obviously, fashion is a compatibility issue for me in particular, right? So I don't want to date women who aren't stylish and take care of their not just their physicality, like going to the gym, but also their clothes. I mean, this is Sunday, and this is how I'm dressed in these new pants I got. That this is who I am. And so it's these kind of seemingly trivial things to other people can be super important to you, right? And all sorts of things, right? As I said, tarot. They're not all bad, right? It can be, couples can find themselves blessed with a kind of compatible partner. Like, this is why your grandparents, my grandparents would have said, marry your best friend. Because what that really means is marry someone you're compatible with. Because best friends have things in common, right? They see the world in similar ways, right? So if I were to date a woman who was, say, very leftist, and I'm not very leftist, well, guess what? This is going to kind of fall apart a little bit because we are going to conflict on some really fundamental issues. So in the beginning, in the early stages, sure, it might be great, right? We are attractive, we want to have sex together, right? We get along, so we can they're, nice to people and all those. So and we get along in this kind of very superficial way. But as it progresses, you find more roadblocks and more reason to think, look, this doesn't have long-term potential, right? Maybe, you have short-term potential for a little bit of time because of looks, because of, say, maybe you admire that person, right? So this is something that I'm always worried about. Like, so if I meet a woman who kind of looks up to me academically, we can have a kind of relatively short-term relationship because of this admiration, but eventually it starts to break down. So if she's not really on the same page at me with really important things like politics and evolution or religion or these kinds of things, all are what fall down to compatibility. Now in traditional dating, and I don't mean dating like now, I mean in the past, which the kind of dating that say my grandparents would, these compatibility issues are front and center, right? Because the mate selection process is very truncated. So my grandmother basically had to marry my grandfather because that was the only guy she ever went on a date with, and her family was like, that's it. And so they had to kind of squash a lot of the compatibility issues, but they had to work out what were the important ones, and if those worked, we could go forward, right? They could go forward. But now, because of the elaborate and long-term nature of dating as opposed to just getting married, we can potentially find trivial, by old standards, excuses to leave someone, right? So the fact that you want the toilet paper this way and I want it that way, that's not really an important thing, right? Let's be honest. But people fight over these things. And so the more ability you have to choose, the more kind of picky you will be in terms of your compatibility issues. One of the things that comes up with compatibility kind of intuitively is the age issue. So there's no particular rule that says, me at 46, I'm going to be patently incompatible with, let's say, a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old. But the probability is higher because of lived experiences, because older people, for example, let's take politics, older people tend to kind of mature into a conservatism a little bit. So younger people tend to be more liberal, older people tend to be more conservative, even within our lifetimes. And what this translates to is a kind of political incompatibility. And so the issue is that the age couples, the large age gap couples, are likely to have less compatibility because of all these issues. They could be physically attracted to one another. They can be competent. They can be nice. They can have good character. But the things that you may choose to do on a Friday night might be so fundamentally different, for example, and that can create all kinds of incompatibility. And lastly, of course, things like hobbies are a matter of compatibility. Now, there's lots of ways of being compatible. Indeed, we wrote a paper which I will provide you a picture with right here so you can see. But we identified 24, but is it really 24? I doubt it. It's probably a far fewer number. So the 24 was things like hobbies and religion and values and all these types of things, and they're all important issues. What are the core issues of compatibility? We don't know. Why is that? Because compatibility is a particularly difficult thing to study. Compatibility is not the same thing as what's called like homogamy or assortative mating, which is where people pair up with people like them. For example, that's even the case for physical attractiveness, and we see it in depression with research, research that I'm involved with in the Czech Republic. But the difficulty is it's that the fact that there's so many kinds of ways to be incompatible, right? The list is potentially endless because each person has their own kind of personally tailored filter at that level of relationship. And so now that we're so particular about who we choose and who we say we're compatible with, who we vibe with, for example, I think that's what the vibe is just compatibility. It's particularly difficult to study. So it's something I want to study more, certainly. And we have to work on this, but it's about how do you coordinate with your partner, and like in any kind of thing like dance, which is what this really is at this point, it's quite difficult. Not all dance partners will be compatible with you, even if they're very skilled dance partners. Right? So I also want to know from you, so tell me in the comments, do you think that I need to add character to this model, not add character to myself or something right there, right? But should the second level filter be not just two C's of competence and compassion, but it should be a third C of character, right? Trustworthiness, integrity. So if I add this in, and I'm pretty sure, I think I do, but I want to get some thoughts from you about whether you think it's necessary, or maybe you think character falls within these other two, right? A nice person has a proper character, or a ambitious person has the right character. But I was thinking of character more like trustworthiness and integrity and honesty and things like that. Kind of personality stuff, which is interesting in the sense that as a personality psychologist, I would have completely missed this aspect of mate choice when I was initially forming this model, but this model was originally formed around kind of evolutionary insights about mate choice, and I guess personality psychology hadn't been well considered. So I think character matters, but tell me what you think. All right, so just a short video today, that's all I want to say. Have a good day, like, follow, share, all this wonderful stuff. Till next time, ciao.